Are we ready? We're ready.
Hi, everybody. I'm Ann Raridan with Sustainable Blacksburg. I want to welcome you here. We are partnering on these monthly programs with Blacksburg Library. Next month, we will be here on November 30th with an introduction to energy audits with someone from the local company Energy Check. And I just want to tell you about a couple of other things before I introduce our speaker. Tonight, Science on Tap at Rising Silo Brewery will have the Innovation is Our Future with the Roanoke Blacksburg Technology Council at 5:30. The Time Bank is going to have another one of their repair cafes at the Habitat Restore in Christiansburg on November 5th from 10 to 2. And Sustainable Blacksburg is looking for some volunteers to help us with a sustainable wrapping booth at the Y Craft Fair, November 11th and 12th. And if you're not on our listserv, we send out a list of sustainability related events once or twice a month. So there'll be a sign up sheet in the back of the room. So with that, I want to introduce our speaker, Rebekah Paulson. She's the executive director of the Friends of Stadium Woods, and she's going to talk about Virginia Tech's old growth forest. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Ann. Thanks, everyone, for being here. I appreciate you coming. We're going to talk today about the old growth forest at Virginia Tech. How many of you, before you saw this event advertised, knew there was an old growth forest at Virginia Tech? Woohoo! Okay, excellent. So the reason I call it the best kept secret is that a lot of people still do not know that there's an old growth forest at Virginia Tech. And while we'll talk about the university and how they've started to embrace for several years the old growth forest, but there are still more things that I think we could do on campus to celebrate the old growth forest. So some of these folks in these pictures, this couple came all the way from Ohio as tourists just to see the old growth forest on Virginia Tech's campus, and we just happened to be in the woods and ran into them. That was really cool. This next group of people is Beth Umberger and other volunteers who were removing invasive plants in the woods, and then just some other photos. So most of the photos are my photos. One or two I've taken from other people. So we're going to talk about what is an old growth forest, why old growth is unique and rare, and also a little brief history and the turf battle that we had in 2011, 2012, and this new era of cooperation that we have with the university and other folks. And we'll talk about the decade-long effort to remove the invasive plants in Stadium Woods, which has been very key for the ecosystem. And then some information about the research that we fund through our endowment fund with the Community Foundation, and just some challenges and threats to the woods integrity. So what is an old growth forest? There are several ways to define an old growth forest, and one of them is, well, basically, first of all, the woods are 12 to 15 acre woods on campus. It's about 12 acres on the ground, but if you looked at it from the air, it's 15 acres with the canopy. It was privately held for a long time before Virginia Tech purchased it about 100 years ago. And when they purchased it, it was a rectangle. So it was obvious it had been fenced and probably used for grazing animals. It has been a teaching and research location for many, many years. And many professors and classes use the woods as a teaching environment and also for research and for labs. There's also the training area that the Corps of Cadets use, and it was really taken for granted until 2011 when the woods were threatened. So at that point, we didn't know that it was an old growth forest, but we quickly proved that it was to help preserve it. And we'll talk a little bit about the historical and natural resource value of the woods. So this is on your left is Jeff Kerwin. Many of you may know him. He's a retired forestry professor. He's also the author of Remarkable Trees of Virginia. Sorry. So old growth definitions. Well, there are several ways that the old growth can be defined, but some of the defining features are that it is a primary forest, a virgin forest, that it's never been cut, it's never been developed, and also that there haven't been significant disturbances to change the ecosystem in the woods. So amazingly, there has been no logging or development in what's left of the woods, which is pretty amazing considering it's between the town and the university. Yes?
Trees all are there actually big trees there or?
Yes, there are. We're getting to that, but there are trees between 250 and 350 years old. 450, I'm sorry. So, John Seiler defined Stadium Woods as an uneven aged, old growth, white oak forest remnant so rare that it may be the largest of its type in the Eastern USA. John Seiler is an alumni distinguished professor at Virginia Tech, and he's also known as Dr. Dendro. So what characteristics does Stadium Woods have, the old growth forest that is old growth? Well, actually, amazingly, it has all the characteristics. So this is the presence of older trees. It's a mixed age stand. There's a large canopy with openings from trees that have fallen down. There's pit and mound topography and down wood in various stages of decay, like in this picture. And there's standing snags, which are very important for wildlife and insects. And there's a multi-layered canopy. So there's an underlaying canopy of smaller trees. And mostly the soils are intact. There has been some damage to the soils from dumping and, but that dumping has stopped now. Yes.
What is a pit and mound?
A pit and mound is when a tree falls down, a big tree falls down, and it leaves a pit in the soil. You're welcome. And it's a multi-layered canopy, and there's also a healthy fungal system and present of indicator species.
What is it in the years?
Okay, I might have to get a master naturalist to better answer that. An indicator species is one that it's one that indicates that it is an old growth forest, and it's a type of species that supports other species. Am I getting that right, Master Naturalist? Somebody else want to take it? No. Okay.
I'll Google it. I'll Google it.
Okay, thanks.
Are we talking about like something really small?
Sure, it could be a mushroom, it could be an insect, it could be a reptile. In this case, I'm actually specifically referring to salamanders.
Okay.
So it indicates the health of the woods.
Okay.
Is that good?
Yeah, and
Okay.
I assume in regards to the mound that it's like well, the pit is what's left after the tree falls over, but I assume the mound is what's left of the tree as it decomposes on top of the ground.
Yeah, I don't know technically what it is, but I think it's what's left over on the root system and the dirt that's on it when it falls.
So an indicator species says it's an organism whose presence, absence, or abundance reflects a specific environmental condition. So they can signal a change in the biological conditions of a particular ecosystem, and thus may be used as a proxy to diagnose the health of the
Thank you.
ecosystem.
Oh, I don't feel so bad. I didn't know all that. So, old growth characteristics of Stadium Woods. There are older trees. Some are estimated to be 450 years old. It's uneven aged. There's canopy openings from where large trees have fallen down. There's pits and mounds. There's woody debris. There's standing dead snags, dead trees. The soil is mostly intact, and there's been minimal in the overall scheme of the life of the forest disturbance. There has been disturbance, and we'll talk about that. So, in this photo, what characteristics do you see of an old growth forest? Anyone? I mean, the obvious one is in the middle, the big tree. Yes,
Several smaller, trees around the large ones, so it's, almost
yep,
I've seen a lot of,
snags. There's a snag in there. And woody debris is another one. And in this one, on the far left, I mean, the far right, you can see an older tree and a dead snag, and then other multi-canopy. And then over here, there's debris on the floor, and then also there's native plants there, several of them. So why is old growth so rare? This is what is truly important. Most US forests, especially in the East Coast, have been logged. They've been farmed or they've been developed. So there is very little old growth left on the East Coast, less than 1%, and some say 0.5% or less remaining. On the West Coast, there's about 5%. Actually, now there's probably closer to 4%. And Stadium Woods is the only confirmed old growth forest on a university campus. It's a unique ecosystem that can't be replaced. You hear a lot about people saying, oh, well, let's just plant a new forest to make up for the old growth that we've logged. Well, that's well and good, but that takes 500 years before it could even be considered anything close to old growth. So it's irreplaceable. And that was the key in saving it. So here's a little interesting history about the woods. This map is one that John Seiler found that was drawn during the Confederate War. And you can see that it indicates where Stadium Woods was at that time and is now, although it was probably a much bigger stand of trees. And then over here, after World War II, there were a lot of veterans coming back from the war and going to school. And Virginia Tech didn't have enough housing, which is a familiar story. And they put people in little trailers in the woods. And this was a minimal disturbance. There's still some evidence of this community that was there for a few years. And that is, if you go in, you'll see old sidewalks that are in the woods, which is where built around the woods. Okay, so we'll talk briefly about the turf battle. I think most people know all about it. And if you don't, you're welcome to go to our website and view the videos and the old articles in the newspapers and TV articles. But this is the now athletic practice facility. It is built next to the woods, and you can see it in this shot through the woods behind the trees. So what did we have to do? We had to prove that the woods were an old growth forest so that it could be protected. And Virginia Master Naturalists, of which there's several in the room, participated in a tree inventory. And that inventory measured and defined all the trees in the woods that were over 12 inches in diameter. And at that time, it was over 500 trees. This summer, a new inventory was done by graduate students, and that inventory identified, not sure I'm going to get the number right, I would say over, oh, I can't remember now, so I'm not even going to say a number, but exponentially more trees, and they measured down to 4 inches in diameter. So that inventory has been updated. It was 10 years old. We've lost some big trees, but we also have a lot more smaller trees. So I'm sorry I don't have that figure, but I'm blanking right now. So at one point, 2 administrators walked President Steger through the woods at the time when this was controversial. And those administrators told President Steger that the trees were only about 80 years old and they weren't important. It was just a wood lot and it wouldn't matter if the trees were cut down. And when John Seiler and his colleagues heard that, he said, okay, fine, now we have to core the trees to prove how old they are. So he and a colleague cored several trees And they were able to prove from the actual wood from the core, for example, tree 101, that the wood that remained on the inside of the tree was actually from 1697. So after coring several trees, it was easier to prove to the administration that it was indeed old growth. So also Biohabitats from Baltimore was hired to assess the woods, and they came to the same conclusions that our forest department already had. And then John also consulted with old growth forest experts in the country, including Bob Levitt, which if you read about old growth, you're going to come across his name. So this is the core of tree 101, and John marked it from when Virginia Tech was created, after the Civil War, and other major events. This is tree number 1, which is on the edge of the woods near it overlooks the tennis courts. That tree is named the Colbert Oak. The Environmental Coalition, during the time when we were trying to save the woods, there were lots of activities and events and things going on that really marked that the woods were special and that they should be saved. And one was an event, a big event that was about 350 people, and it was staged at the Colbert Oak. They decided to name this white oak for Colbert and hoped that he would put it on his TV show at the time. And there were banners, and there was a band, and there was a platform where speeches were given, and it was a really fun event. And they sent all the banners and things to Stephen Colbert, but unfortunately he was on a 2-week hiatus negotiating his contract, so it did not get on the show, but I was told he tweeted about it. So the Friends of Stadium Woods is a grassroots movement that started in 2011 because of the threat to the woods being developed. And it was very grassroots. There were already people on campus and in the community and individuals doing things that they thought would help spread the word and protect it. But what happened for me, how I got involved, someone called me and said, you have to contact Jeff Kerwin and we have to do whatever to protect it. So that's what I did. And Jeff Kerwin and I decided to hold a meeting right here in the library in about a week and a half from that time. And we just spread the news by word of mouth and asked people to come and to tell their friends. And we had, with just a week and a half notice, about 50 or 60 people come to the meeting. And so that was the beginning of the effort to save the woods. And both of these videos are very good. The first one, Save Stadium Woods, was created by a freshman, Chris Risch. And then later, when he was a graduate student, he created the Preserve Stadium Woods video. If you haven't seen them, or even if you have, they're great to watch again. We worked very hard on press coverage, including at first, we just wrote letters to the editor of the Roanoke Times. And for the first couple of weeks in December of 2011, there were usually about 2 letters a day for about 2 weeks. And that got a lot of attention. And then, of course, after that, the TV channels picked it up as well. What I feel was my biggest coup is I worked really hard to get a Washington Post reporter to come to Blacksburg to do an article. And Daryl Fears came from the Washington Post, and he wrote an excellent article that was in the Washington Post. And that basically blew open the issue nationwide. And then after that, we even had international articles in the press.
You mentioned seeing these videos. How do you access them?
Through the website, or you can go directly to YouTube and just put in the name of the video, Save Stadium Woods, or if you just put Stadium Woods, it'll pull up both of them. There was also a CNN article that was done. CNN came for graduation that year because the governor was going to be there because his daughters were graduating. Mark Warner and Michelle Obama were speaking. So CNN was on campus and they did a really good interview as well, and article. And then we've talked a little bit about the history, the advocacy. There were advocacy efforts going on all over town and campus by just lots of different people and groups. It wasn't all, you know, it was just grassroots oriented. And I walked into Eats one day and there was a poster of a tree. And it was just beautiful, and it said Save Stadium Woods, and I said, who made that? I need to meet them. And so Ann Groves created it, and from there she made posters and we sold them to raise money for the effort, and it's just a beautiful poster. And then eventually in 2012 we created an endowment fund, and we're raising money to fund research. And one day we would like to see the university put the woods in a conservation easement, and we could use funds for that as well. So the guiding purpose is preservation. We want the woods to always be there for future generations and current generations. That's the goal of the Friends of Stadium Woods. And I believe now also the goal of the university, which is great. So this is just a photo of Jeff. It was an event where they brought 5th graders from Margaret Beeks, and we put them through different stations in the woods to teach them about the woods. And then that's Jeff and myself and Erica Largen. Erica Largen at the time in 2011 and 2012 was the president of the Environmental Coalition. So these are just some of the other advocacy efforts. This is the poster I was talking about. These banners on a tree just appeared there. We have no idea who put them there. That was really cool. This was when College Avenue in front of like the Lyric was redone, and they let people come in and draw with chalk and stuff. And this was drawn by someone or someone's. And then this is Jeff giving a tour. We gave a lot of tours in the woods, and we still do occasionally. So if you're interested, just let me know, and we can schedule one. And this is the athletic practice facility, and this was what was to be built that instead was built in 2014-15 next to the woods. So it is a new era. The new era came about with administration change and also changes in athletics. I reached out to both Dr. Sands and Whit Babcock before they even came on campus to Virginia Tech, and we eventually met with each of them after they came to campus. And John Seiler and the Arboretum Committee worked very hard to convince the university to hire a university arborist. Before this, there was not a university arborist. So Jamie King is the university arborist, and he then hired Kenny Harmon. So we now have 2 arborists on campus, and he has a team, and he has graduate students that help him, and he coordinates with the forestry department on research. And in 2016, there was a graduate student who was an arborist, but he came to get his master's degree, and he was tasked with his research project was to create a stewardship plan for the woods. And he did that. It's a very good plan. And that is now part of what Jamie is working on, is to implement some of the, well, eventually we hope all the goals, but there are a lot of goals in it. But some of it is being instituted now. And we collaborate directly with Jamie, and the Virginia Master Naturalists also coordinate with Jamie. And we have a very good relationship. So I like to say the university has put it on the map, the old growth forest. This is from the Beyond Boundaries plan. And as you can see, it's labeled old growth forest. And I just love that. So the plan notes all the policy to preserve, protect, and manage the old growth forest. These are some of the goals. The stewardship plan, and I already mentioned, was written by Rodney in 2000, finished in 2016, and was part of the forest resources and environmental conservation in the college. It's 347-page report, and you can find it online at Tech. So this is Beth Umberger. She and her husband Fred have been leading groups of volunteers for many years to remove invasive species in Stadium Woods. And this is a group of Corps cadets who came, who were helping. When they come, there's a large contingent and they get a lot done. It's really amazing. But even individuals who remove invasive plants in the woods make a great impact, and the cumulative effect has been incredible. So initially, the woods were completely covered in invasive plants and vines, and you can see that in this picture. And in the second picture, that's the same location. When you stood here in front of these vines, you could not even see that tree. And so it has really been incredible, the difference in the ecosystem.
How are they removing these invasive species?
They're removed by hand. It's all removed by hand.
So about the groups that might be.
Well, if they come up again, they just have to dig them or pull them out more. And English ivy is a particular problem, but this invasive species removal will have to be ongoing. It's had a great effect. And we now have dozens and dozens of native plants coming back, plus the saplings. But removing like English ivy is something that's going to have to go on forever. But there's such a big difference in the woods that it's unbelievable. I wish we had more pictures of when it was really covered in invasives, because you could stand on the edge of the woods and not see 5 feet into it. So it's been a pretty miraculous effort. Sorry. So it's been a decade, and we have the resurgence of native trees and native plants and shrubs. These are just some of the examples. I'm not going to go through them all, but there's just dozens. Beth is always amazed, and she'll say, "You got to come over. I found this plant. I can't believe it's there." It's really incredible. So this is one of the first ones was black cohosh, and Jeff said, you know, we had never seen this in the woods until we started removing invasives. Bloodroot, cutleaf toothwort, mayapple. There's huge stands of mayapple now, and jewelweed, golden groundsel, wild ginger, and wood poppy, and many, many, many other native species. And these are just some of the seasons in the woods. And that's more Master Naturalists training volunteers before they would go to remove invasives. So through our endowment, we've now funded 2 undergraduate students and Dr. Jordan Metzger. He is the director of the Arborarium on campus. The first student that worked with Dr. Metzger that we funded is Alan Milby. He now works at the Harvard Herbarium, and his and Dr. Metzger's research was on mosses, liverworts, and hornworts, which can be bioindicators of the forest health. And please don't ask me exactly what liverworts and hornworts are, but that's moss. I know that. And that's on woody debris in the woods. So, and Alan presented at a conference when he was still a student. They documented 21 moss species and 4 liverwort species in the old growth forest. And 8 of those moss species and 1 liverwort were new to the record for Montgomery County. And they'll be using the collections into the future. And this year, their project was published. So it's now published research. The second student that worked with Jordan is Christine Herzog, and she focused on mushrooms. And they discovered and collected 82 different mushrooms, and they are working to identify all of them for future projects too. So if you're over there and you're inclined, you can help with the research by viewing their observations and contributing photos and information to iNaturalist. This is a cool photo of a little mushroom in the acorn cap. So there have been many challenges and threats, even after we got past the period of the woods would not be developed. There is vandalism frequently. There are some benches that have had to be removed because they were vandalized. This was the picnic table by the old Cranwell Center. There's cement and other debris that was dumped in there. And some of that's still there. It's on the list. When I mentioned it to Jamie, he says, yeah, it's on the list to get that out of there. There's an area in the middle of the woods that floods and it's caused a lot of damage. In fact, some of the trees there had to be removed because the water damage and the flooding killed them. So there's lots of things still to do. There was, for many years, football players were told to park on just willy-nilly in the woods. And so once we quote unquote saved the woods from the athletic practice facility, then we started focusing on getting the university to move the vehicles off the tree roots. And there's still some willy-nilly parking, but most of it has been taken care of. There are a few football player cars that are still parked along the fence on the town side there. We'd like to see that go away, but it's much improved. So to change the parking, we tried all the usual routes, asking nicely, writing, etc. And with no response, then we decided to have a civil demonstration, and still there was no change. So 5 of us were arrested. 2 of us are here in the room. Rose Marie was also arrested by Virginia Tech police, and it created a huge bad press incident for Virginia Tech. And then it was after that, the next year, the cars were parked elsewhere, mostly elsewhere. These posters were made by Ann Groves. And then one time we handed out little notes to the football players as they came to park and asked them to carpool, because they park in a parking lot by VT Engage, the old Cranwell lot, we call it. They park in that lot, and if they carpooled, they could all fit there, but they don't necessarily carpool. So once that lot is full, then they drive into and through the woods to these other parking places that are along the fence. So we'd like to see that go away. And this time we were handing out notes, and we were so excited because these 4 football players came in one car, and we just praised them for carpooling, and they were really nice. And they took a picture with Arlene, who also got arrested with us. And, they just tower over her. So it's a cute picture. Lately, I became aware of the Center Street tailgates, and there's been stuff in the press. I'm imagining you all know about it, so I'm not going to talk about it a lot. But we spent 4 years lobbying Virginia Tech and the town to do something about it. These are some of the issues. There's basically no crowd control. There's excessive alcohol and underage drinking. There's trash, lack of restrooms, people go into the woods and just pee. I'm talking hundreds of people, not just 1 or 2. So these are all the issues with that. So we formed a neighborhood group in 2018 and lobbied, which I already mentioned, and there are some changes being made. And Virginia Tech Facilities, Police, and Athletics partnered on fencing. So there's now fencing on the edge of the woods to keep people from going from that area through the woods to the stadium, which is a huge improvement. And it also keeps vehicles out of the woods. And then Virginia Tech rerouted the students so that they couldn't go through the woods, and they have to go all around to get to the student gate. And that has been successful as well. And they also, we've asked for many years for them to create an area on campus where the students can tailgate. And that has now happened. So we're very pleased with what Virginia Tech has done. The town, unfortunately, has failed this fall. They were planning, well, I don't know what their plans were, but they said that they would do something about the crowds and the parties, have the students follow rules so that the town rules were being enforced. And it's been a total fail. In the previous to this year, there were usually 30 to 35 police officers, Blacksburg police, that would go around the corner, around the edge of it, just to at least observe and be there. And now there's not even that. So I don't know what's going on, but it's a complete fail. There's also been challenges for development next to it. There's been several different plans. First, luxury condominiums, that didn't work. And then American Campus Communities bought the property and they want to build a 4-level apartment building for students. First, they want proposed 698 beds, and that failed. And so then they proposed 298, and they withdrew that proposal because it was going to fail. So the main issue is lack of ingress and egress. There's only one road that goes in there, and that's it. There's no way for fire trucks or police or rescue squads to go in and get out easily. So we'll end with some good news. This is very exciting, good news. This year, students on campus created a new student organization in September. It's called the Old Growth Forest Stewards. And we have been wanting this to happen for a long time. And it was a spontaneous thing that happened with some encouragement from John Seiler. And there is this new group. They had their first meeting in October. And they are using the maroon and orange logo. We use the green and black one. And we're very excited about this. We think if there's a student organization and they're working with their peers, that there'll be a lot more interest in protecting the woods and appreciating it. And so we are thrilled by this new development. So thank you very much. And I'm open to questions, either online or in the room. I know there've been a few and I tried to answer them, but are there others? Yes.
Yeah, I can always tech stuff around them.
I'm sorry?
I can always tech buildings, car parks and things around them. That kind of protects it from forest.
It may, yeah, it may.
I'd be worried about runoff.
Can you repeat that?
Yeah. The question is, or the observation is that maybe with the buildings that are around the woods, that it protects it from fire. I'm not,
In fact, there are trees right up to the edge.
there are trees right up to the edge. Yes.
Is forest fire dangerous?
I hope not.
Well, no, we came from California.
Yeah, no, not like it, not like, yeah. Not like in California. It's not anything like California. And in fact, this area has many natural springs, at least 7. And until the road was renamed in the athletic complex, the road was called Spring Road. This was a known area for water, and people in the town came to the woods to collect fresh water to drink. So no, I don't think it is a threat of a natural forest fire.
When a tree dies naturally, what is the final mechanism that brings the trees back, that results in their death? I say that because I observed I've spent a lot of time in the woods, and I was in my woods in the back of our house, and there was a white oak that leafed out beautifully. I went on a vacation and came back, and it was right down, and I looked inside, and it was the heartwood that was on the outer side, where the cambium is. That's where the transport system.
The question is, what is it that finally brings down an old tree? Specifically in this case, we were talking about white oak. In the woods, it has been wind on the edge. We have what's called the edge effect. And so when there's very high winds, sometimes we lose a tree. It can also be from too much water that loosens up the soil and the roots, and then the wind combined with the wind, it'll knock it down. So it can take a long time for damage to tree roots to actually manifest itself. You might not notice, but if there's damage to the ground around it and the root system, it is eventually going to fail. And it starts, if you look at the top of the trees, when it leaves out, and there's areas up there that do not leaf out, it's damaged and it's starting to have some issues. And that's probably from the root zone damage. So, but on an individual tree, you really just have to have it assessed by an arborist. But white oaks are always empty in the middle. They're always hollow. But they only need a very small bit around the edge, all the way around the edge to hold it up. Jeff Kerwin compares it to like pipes in your house, or beams in your house that hold up your house. They're hollow also, but even though it's hollow, what is on the outside is what holds up the tree. And if that's healthy, it's fine.
I just add one thing, actually, that it's not directly related to your question, but English ivy is something that can kill trees. So having taken out the English ivy, they've really rescued a lot of the trees in the woods. But the town has also kind of started to try to educate people about the problem of these invasive vines that can kill the trees. And we've been kind of helping to promote that. And also there's a number of people in town, we're kind of looking at a campaign. In Northern Virginia, they have a tree rescue group where they're trying to educate people about the problem of English ivy and other invasive vines and how they can ultimately kill the trees. So we're kind of looking at that. I'm supposed to talk with somebody from that campaign this week. And so anyway, if you're interested, that will be something that we'll probably be sending out some more information about, and kind of looking for volunteers to help educate people about cutting those invasive vines so they don't kill the trees.
Along what you said, what about bittersweet and autumn olive? Are those would they a problem in Stadium Woods?
Bittersweet was, yes.
How do you get rid of that? Just keep.
You have to cut the vines around the bottom. You don't have to pull them off. You can just cut them all the way around the bottom and maybe pull them back a little bit, but if they're tight to the tree, you don't pull them off. If they're cut off from the soil and the source of their nutrition, they'll die.
Do you paint any?
We don't use chemicals. Volunteers aren't allowed to use any chemicals.
Or a tree falls over, there's a policy to just leave it there.
If it falls over, if it's not in the way of the paths. Sometimes it falls on the paths and then that needs to be removed. But as much as possible, when a tree is cut down or falls down, the debris is moved into the woods. So it can decompose. Mary?
I just thought you might want to mention, some people might not have ever been there the Sunday time when anybody.
Yeah, if you want to go and help remove invasive species, we can, or just see it. You can walk over there. We could maybe go today, but I'm sure people are busy. We do have regular invasive plant removals, but it depends on Beth and Fred's schedule. So it's usually Tuesday and Sunday from 3 to 5, but I think they're out of town right now. So it's better to check than just go and expect to find Beth and Fred.
Watch for tours.
Yeah, or watch for tours. Okay. Middle of November, yes.
I realize it's a good thing the way everything happened, but if it wasn't for the threat to the woods in 2011, would we even be having a conversation about it being a full growth? Was it on a trajectory of being recognized at all?
I have no idea. The professors, that it was already in the master plan that this was more or less a greenway and protected area. So that's why they kind of just took it for granted it would be there. But what did happen is that Jeff Kerwin, a tree fell down and Jeff Kerwin went, and it was like 2011 or maybe in 2010. And he decided to count the, I'm losing my words, rings, thank you. He decided to count the tree rings. And there were over 350 tree rings. And he went to John Seiler and said, we really need to do something to protect this, and we need to do more research. Because this could be an old growth forest. And at that time, John and the Arboretum Committee had already been told quietly that athletics was going to build there, and that they were tasked with deciding how many trees had to be planted somewhere else to make up for the old growth forest. And they responded, no, you can't cut that down. You know, this is a special place and we use it for teaching and labs, and, you know, that's a bad idea. And they were told, it's a done deal. Keep it to yourself, keep it quiet, and just figure out what we want you to figure out. And John Seiler now says, now I know that means tell everyone you know. But at that time, they did keep it quiet. But at that same time, Jeff discovered this tree with 350 tree rings. And so when he told John, John already knew what the plans were, but he didn't tell Jeff. And so it wasn't until it was in the newspaper that it became public knowledge. So it could be that because Jeff actually counted the rings and said, you know, we need to do something. And that's when the inventory started too. So an inventory started to also prove it. So it's very likely, even if it wasn't threatened, that because of those things, that maybe we would have discovered it was an old growth forest, but I don't know. I mean, I wouldn't have been involved. And I'm sorry I didn't repeat that question, but another question? Were there any questions in the chat?
I mean, this is very precious. But in general, with climate change, with temperature, does it have a long-term future?
It does. The question is, with climate change, are the woods have a future of 100 or 150 years? And my answer is yes, because we are fortunate to be in the Appalachian Mountains. This is one of the most biodiverse regions in the country and in the world. And I think that it will have an impact, but I think the bigger impact has been the development around it, and the lack of protection until now. And that's part of why the research is being done, because some of these indicator species like salamanders and mushrooms and mosses, they're looking at them, and then they can see in the future the changes. They can monitor the changes in the plants and in what species are in there. So Jamie King says a lot, there has been, for many years, there was a mantra, well, we'll just wait till the trees fall down and then we'll build there. But Jamie King says it will always be an old growth forest. And, you know, it has so many characteristics. It's not based just on old trees. So I hope that answers your question, but there are old trees. We've lost a lot of old trees on the edge, but there are new trees coming up that are going to take their place. And that's one of the definitions. It's a continuing ecosystem. So old trees are replaced by new trees. Does that answer it?
Yeah, I mean, talk about killing the trees, but if you were harvesting trees, maybe the white oak is no longer the best tree growing in Virginia. Was South American tree grows faster. Time.
Yeah, but we're not growing the trees for timber in Stadium Woods. It's an old growth forest and it's protected. Yeah.
Place.
Well, that's a different issue, and that's one I would direct you to the forestry department.
We do have a question from Ross. They asked, what is preventing conservation?
The university is so far preventing a conservation easement. They have not been interested in the conservation easement because for one reason, it means that they have to permanently not build in the woods, not develop it, and they also have to give it up in a way, not really, but in a way. So a conservation easement is, a permanent easement that the woods not be developed in any way. And when we first started proposing that, the answer was, well, we don't want to tie the hands of, future administrations. Well, that's exactly what we want to do. We've worked closely with the New River Land Trust, and John Eustace and I are on the same page. In fact, I published an article this spring with the same title, and I sent it to him, and he said, I'm with you, we're here, we're ready. It still needs a conservation easement, but to date, Virginia Tech has not been interested in doing that. And in fact, at one point, Jeff and I went to our state senator, Senator Edwards, and we asked him to introduce legislation to actually take the woods away from Virginia Tech and give it to the Department of Conservation Resources in the state to manage and protect. And I asked them to keep that legislation quiet because I knew that Virginia Tech would squash it. And so they did keep it quiet, but when it came out in January 2014, Virginia Tech was very much against it. And we went to a subcommittee to present it, and well, John Edwards did, and we spoke there, and it was squashed in committee. So it needs a conservation easement. That's the only way to protect it from not being developed by future administrations. But Virginia Tech is not there yet. They're not there yet, but we still advocate for that. Any other questions?
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Great, thank you, Rebecca.
And I know Rebecca left some of her cards in the back there, if you're interested in picking that up. And also there's some of the fact sheets about English ivy too, that the town had put together, if you're interested in that.
Wow.
Yeah.